Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of The Matt Cave. Thank you all so much for spelunking on by. This week, it's draft reactions. Not just draft reactions. There's trades, as well as other things that are going on with the Jazz and the Mammoth. So, we've got some stuff to talk about today. That's awesome, because both for the NBA and the NHL, free agency begins on the best day of the year, July 1st. And that's not just because it's Canada Day. That's because it's my birthday. So, there you go. So July 1st, we'll see the free agencies open for both leagues and some major things to happen for both the Jazz and the Mammoth outside of what we're seeing with the draft. And even as I'm recording this, I'm keeping my eye on my phone for any alerts or updates in regards to the Utah Mammoth potentially making more trades as the offseason rolls along in the NHL. Because let's face it, in the NHL, it's quite possibly the worst free agent class in modern memory. I mean, really, there's not much out there that will be a splash signing or a franchise-altering free agent joining your team. That's just not going to happen. So I'm keeping one eye on my phone as I'm recording this to see if GM Bill Armstrong pulls off a blockbuster. But thank you all so much for being here. I really do appreciate you. As always, please, if you haven't done so, please rate this 5 stars wherever it is, however you listen. Leave a review. Whatever comment you want to throw in there is fine by me. And then share this with one person, just one, that you think might enjoy the program. And again, thank you for being here. You can find me on social media, on Facebook and Instagram at The Matt Cave Podcast. I'm also on YouTube, The Matt Cave Podcast. And that about does it for the socials. You know, I tried TikTok. I'm just too old, I guess. I don't know. And until I can, get a job and be able to afford like a camera and a setup, I'm not really going to be on camera for that either. So it's audio only for now. But that's really how we're rolling going forward. So first, let's dive into the first draft that happened. That would be the NBA draft that happened on a Tuesday night. Really odd, but here we are. And the top 4 picks went exactly as I told you guys. No surprises, no shocks, no trades, nothing of the sort. The reason why everybody is always talking about that, and the reason why you feel like somebody is going to make a huge mistake or somebody is going to get too big for their trousers and do something dumb, is because of all the talking heads, the 24-hour news cycle, people thinking that they have a source when they don't, or people thinking that they know more than the GMs, but they don't. And then, like I said last week, sports betting. Sports betting has kind of ruined the sports landscape. But it went the way I told you, the way I predicted, all of that stuff. It was at number 1, A.J. Debonsa. Why did A.J. Debonsa go number 1? Well, he was the best player in college basketball. I know he didn't win the Naismith Player of the Year award. That went to Cam Boozer, but I mean, you put Cam Boozer on BYU's depleted squad when they were rotating 7 guys, really. Cam Boozer's not doing what Cam Boozer did at Duke. Darryn Peterson probably could have if Darryn Peterson was healthy and didn't have the whole creatine stuff that he claims was the reason for his whole body cramping issues and all the other stuff. But A.J. Debonsa was BYU. He was. And he carried that team into the NCAA tournament kicking and screaming. And he broke Kevin Durant's record in the Big 12 tournament. I mean, any way you slice it, A.J. Debonsa was the best player. And the reason it was A.J. Debonsa over Darryn Peterson, another reason I should say, is because he fits what Washington's doing better than Darryn Peterson does. So A.J. Debonsa is a forward. He'll play probably the 3 or the 4 for Washington. I would think more the 3. And that fits what they have because they just signed Trae Young to a massive contract extension. So there's not really a spot on the team for a Darryn Peterson because you're just doubling up what you have with Trae Young, and that's not great. Darryn Peterson's better defensively than Trae Young ever will be, but you don't want the same player on the floor at the same time. And that's what would have happened with Washington. That's why I was confident A.J. Debonsa was going number 1. At number 2, the Jazz didn't overthink it. I was afraid they might, and they would go for Cam Boozer or even Caleb Wilson, which would have made me happy because I have been a North Carolina fan in my life, and seeing Caleb Wilson go to Utah I thought would be pretty cool, but they didn't overthink it. They just went with the best player on the board in Darryn Peterson. not only was he the best player on the board and a lot of people's number one overall prospect, he fits what the Jazz needed. So it's one of those happy times as a fan that you look at your team and they draft not only for best player available, but that best player available fills a cavernous hole that the team has, which is scoring at the 2 guard, who can also defend, is kind of long, and is athletic. The Jazz have never had that at the shooting guard position. You could say Donovan Mitchell was a shooting guard. He wasn't tall enough to be a shooting guard. He's a shooting guard in a point guard's body. And I'm going with, in history, you're not winning with that player. I understand that the Knicks just did so with Jalen Brunson, but that's an outlier. It's an outlier like Isaiah Thomas and the Bad Boys of Detroit when they won. So you can't just predicate your entire team off of a small shooting guard who is a volume scorer. You just can't. It was lightning in a bottle with the Knicks and a choke job by the Spurs. 100% a choke job by the Spurs. And Victor Wembanyama, who is supposed to be the face of the NBA, it might be the face of the villainy of the NBA, depending on how he reacts to losing in the finals next season. But with the Jazz, when you look at their potential starting lineup, it's kind of scary when you look at this roster. So, obviously, you got Lauri Markkanen. You got Jaren Jackson Jr. You have Keyonte George. You could throw Ace Bailey in there since he has a year under his belt and you feel more comfortable starting him than a rookie. And then potentially Walker Kessler. Are you kidding me? That is a team that is not fighting for a play-in spot. That is a playoff team. Should they be healthy? Should head coach Will Hardy be what everyone thinks he is? And I think he will be. It almost doesn't matter who's coming off the bench. But who's coming off the bench, you might ask? That's a good question, dear Spelunker. You got Bryce Sensabaugh, who is just a walking bucket. You got Darryn Peterson or Ace Bailey. Flip-flop them, doesn't matter. Then you have Isaiah Collier, running point guard, Kyle Filipowski. So that's really good. The big hole on the bench is a big man. A big man that can spell Lauri Markkanen, Walker Kessler, Jaren Jackson Jr., and you feel confident in doing it. Yusuf Nurkic, I think, would be a very good get for the Jazz if they are able to re-sign him. Kevin Love is gone, unfortunately. He was a very fun player to have. Somebody I'm surprised who wasn't just bought out. And somebody who embraced not just the team, but his role on the team as basically player coach. And he embraced the state of Utah in a way that I was very surprised by. So I'm a Kevin Love fan for life. And that's a really solid bench when you look at it. Yeah, there's still Cody Williams, but I don't think there's much of a future there with him. So you look at that, and you go, wow, that's a team. That's a team I can get behind. And you're darn right. You're darn tootin'. Because this team is going places. And they're going to be going places for many years to come. Danny Ainge, Justin Zanuck, they have done, I'm not going to say a masterful job, because it wasn't masterful. It was ugly. It was unwatchable. And it was pathetic. And it was so bad that the NBA looked at the Jazz as the poster child for changing the tanking rules. Now, I've gone over this time and time again. It wasn't just the Jazz. The Jazz just did it most egregiously. They went up to the line and they forced the NBA to draw the line. So that's basically what happened. And now, when you look at the environment around the Jazz, you look at the teams that are going to be successful for a long time, the ones that are set up. Obviously, Oklahoma City is going to be at the top of the Western Conference, I would say for the next decade, if not longer, if they're able to keep a lot of their players. With the NBA and the salary cap and the aprons and the penalties that come with going on to those aprons, you're not going to see super teams anymore. The players are going to price themselves out. They're going to hit free agency, or the teams are just going to trade them before, restricted free agency and their bird rights hit so that potential team can sign them to a longer deal. But the salary cap and the penalties for surpassing it are very punitive in the NBA. And so you're not going to see those super teams and dynasties like you might have seen in the 90s. If the salary cap existed today, back in the 90s or even the early 2000s, you would not have seen the Lakers and the Bulls as dynasties. Those players wouldn't have been there. And that's where we're at now. So looking forward, you obviously have Oklahoma City, you got San Antonio with Victor Wembanyama. face of the NBA, villain of the NBA, whatever you want to call him. At least he's worth watching. And then other than that, you got Houston. But what's going to happen with Kevin Durant, I don't know. And then when you lose Kevin Durant, how do you replace him? Who knows? Los Angeles is always like the Lakers, not the Clippers. The Lakers are always going to be in the conversation because they're always going to spend money to try and get players. And Luka Doncic is really good. He really is. And they also locked up Austin Reeves for a while. So there is stuff in LA. It's just not anything that really scares you at all. But other than that, Golden State is a retirement home at this point. You got Jimmy Butler coming back from a torn ACL, so who knows what kind of player he's going to be when he gets back. Steph Curry, Draymond Green, they're at the ends of their careers. It's year to year with them. And then they don't really have anything else. Then you have the Phoenix Suns. Devin Booker is worth the price of admission. He really is. He's an all-stud. But what else do they have? The Denver Nuggets, Nikola Jokic, and Jamal Murray. I mean, there's a lot of mileage on those tires for those guys now. Aaron Gordon. I mean, they traded away Michael Porter Jr., which did not help them. So you look at the Denver Nuggets, they're not as invincible as we thought they might be. And then Minnesota is going all in. They have pushed every single chip that they have into the middle with trading for LaMelo Ball here recently. They have Rudy Gobert, who we all know in Jazzland. Really good defender, terrible in the playoffs because you could just isolate him, get him into foul trouble, get him out of there, and then the defense falls apart. They have Ant Edwards, who is really fun to watch. But what else do they have, right? So you're not really afraid of Minnesota either. Because of the lineup the Jazz have, you can kind of handle those teams defensively in a way that most other teams can't. And what a lot of people are missing with the Jazz is they look at the numbers from the last few years, and then they kind of make their predictions off of those numbers. And that's a mistake. Because the Jazz were always resting somebody, right? They were always, Lauri Markkanen has the sneezes, so he needs to miss this game. Or Keyonte George clipped his fingernail wrong, so he needs to be out for this game. And so we've never really seen this team at 100% going full bore. So nobody really knows what this team is capable of. And that's really exciting if you're a Jazz fan. And it's also really angering if you're on ESPN. And I don't know if you guys saw it, but Jaylen Brown, Jaylen Brown of the Boston Celtics, the guy who was an NBA Finals MVP, part of the duo of Tatum and Brown that won the title with the Celtics not too long ago. That was only a couple years ago. He called out ESPN and basically called it garbage. And I stood up when I read that, and I applauded. And I was in a library. No, I wasn't. But when I saw that, I stood up and I applauded. I said, yes, finally, somebody's saying the quiet part out loud. ESPN is garbage. ESPN is not reporting. It's talking heads trying to get the hottest take so that you click on their video or that you watch their crap. It's not worth your time. Get away from ESPN. The only thing I use ESPN for are rosters. I use ESPN for scores. And that's it. Everything else, I go elsewhere. I go to not even Bill Simmons stuff because he has the ESPN sickness. I go to places like The Athletic. I go to places where it's like actual journalists doing their job. So I seek out the beat writers for these different teams for news. It takes a little bit more time, sure, but it's worth it. I'm more informed than an ESPN zombie. So stay away from ESPN. Stay far away. It's garbage programming, and they are hemorrhaging money because they are announcing here soon more layoffs for their on-air talent because they have to feed the beast and Stephen A. Smith and Pat McAfee, and there's just no money to go around. So that's why you're going to see those guys everywhere. Is because there's no money for anybody else. ESPN screwed the pooch on this one, and now they're reaping the benefits, which are none. But I got off track there. There's nobody in the Western Conference other than Oklahoma City and San Antonio that should scare Jazz fans. Yes, when you look at it, the Denver Nuggets will still be a threat, but they're not invincible. Houston, they've got a lot of really good young talent, but that young talent is pretty volatile. The Lakers, who knows what's going to happen post LeBron? And other than that, what do you have? You don't have anything. There's no team in the Western Conference that scares you as a Jazz fan. If your team is 100% healthy, going for it with a mandate to now win, and a head coach that across the league everybody likes and everybody thinks now that he has a mandate to win, he's going to go and win. Now, I'm not saying the Jazz are going to win a title. I'm not saying the Jazz are now poised to surprise everybody with a deep playoff run. Absolutely not. But what I am saying is this team is top 6 capable in the Western Conference as it stands. And that should be exciting for you as a Jazz fan. It really should be. Free agency is going to happen. They're not going to get a splash signing. But what they are going to do is they are going to re-sign Walker Kessler. And then they are going to try and fix the big man bench rotation situation that they have. But that's it. Everything else is ready to go. And yeah, you're going to be hearing news about Keyonte George and what they're going to do, how they're going to handle that situation. Here's what I'm going to tell you, and you could probably take this to the bank, is Keyonte George still has another year to play out on his rookie deal. There is no rush for the Jazz to get an extension signed. There just isn't. He had a wonderful season last year, an out-of-nowhere season, really, when you think about it. He is primed to be one of the best point guards in the league. He is primed. He's sitting right there. He has all the talent to do it. He just needs to go out and do it, now with a mandate to win, instead of just showing up on a terrible team and getting all of the accolades. That's the hard part. Should he do that, the Jazz will re-sign him. It's that simple. If he doesn't do it, then we're in for more complicated contract talks. And maybe Darryn Peterson shifts over to point guard, Ace Bailey to shooting guard, and you allow Keyonte George to sign that restricted free agent offer sheet, and you recoup draft picks. So that's what's going to happen with the Keyonte George situation. You're going to hear a lot of news, a lot of people talking about it, ESPN doing their thing where they're going to try to force the kid out of Salt Lake City. That's what's going to happen. Ignore it. It's as simple as Keyonte George performs, he gets paid. Keyonte George falls short, the conversation changes. So that's what it is. He's under contract. He has to play. We'll see what happens. Walker Kessler, a lot of smoke, a lot of negotiations going on. He's going to re-sign with the Jazz. Everybody's out there trying to fish for content, clicks, all that other stuff. Don't fall for it. He is going to re-sign with the Jazz. He's too critical of a piece for the Jazz to let walk. And he's too much of a question mark for other teams to overpay. So, because nobody knows how he's going to bounce back from his shoulder surgery. That's another thing that people are not really paying attention to, is that shoulder surgery is a big deal. Who knows what kind of player he's going to be when he comes back. So, calm down on the Walker Kessler front. That's it. Enjoy summer ball, Wizards versus Jazz. That's going to be fun. AJ Bonsa versus Darryn Peterson again. And we'll just kind of go from there, Jazz fans. It was a successful draft. The more I read about Darryn Peterson, the more I like the kid. The more I think he's going to work out very well in Will Hardy's system, because he is just plug and play. They don't need to rewrite the book for the kid. So everything is looking up for the Jazz for the first time in like 5, 6, 7 years. That's pretty exciting. All right, let's move it right along to the Utah Mammoth. They drafted this weekend, and boy, was it active. Bill Armstrong was not resting on any sort of laurels. Utah Mammoth making the playoffs for the first time in club history. Young up-and-coming team, very exciting. And the first thing he did was he admitted a mistake. He traded J.J. Peterka from the Mammoth to Boston for 2 first-round picks. Now, the first-round picks are not going to be high. One was Boston's this year, which was number 23 out of 32. And then the other one is a 2028, 2029 draft pick from Florida. Yeah, that one's not going to be very early in the draft either. And if it is top 10 in that year, it remains with Florida, and then it becomes an unprotected first-round pick for the Mammoth. So suffice it to say, it wasn't an admission to a mistake, because Josh Doan is going to be a star in Buffalo. He already is. So that sucks. But Michael Kesselring got shipped off to San Jose. Hopefully he can bounce back and be the defender everybody knows he can be. I'm still rooting for him. And when you're looking at what Utah got back in that trade, They got the number 23 draft pick in this year's draft. They then flipped that pick to Detroit for Sebastian Cossa. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Cossa, I don't blame you. He's played one NHL game in his career, and he wasn't exactly stellar in that performance. But with his team in the AHL, the Detroit Grand Rapids, or the Grand Rapids Red Wings, or whatever they're called, he was one of the best goalies in the AHL. He was. And that's really exciting because we all know Karel Vejmelka plays about 90 games a season, which is obviously an overstatement, but he has played a ton of games, and that's not sustainable. Karel Vejmelka is a very good goalie. He is. He is a very good goalie. Super athletic, able to recover on potential misreads very well. He gets across his crease very quickly, but he plays too many games. And that wear and tear showed, especially as the season went along. Saves that he normally makes were getting through. And that's because there was not a reliable backup. They're hoping, the Mammoth, as in they, are hoping that Cossa can be that backup. Or that this trade galvanizes their other goalies in their pipeline to perform more consistently. Jackson Stauber, Matt Villalta, even Michael Hrabal, who is like 18 years old, is not going to see the NHL for many years to come. But that's what the hope is with Cossa, trading that number 23 pick to get him. They picked up the draft pick from the LA Kings. They traded up from 19 to 17 to select Ethan Belchetz, who was somebody I didn't talk about in this program or on the Utah Mammoth Daily because I didn't think he was going to fall to Utah. Ethan Belchetz is an 18-year-old who is, get ready for this, 6'5" and 230 pounds. So he weighs about 20 pounds more than me, 30 pounds more than me, and he's 4 inches taller than me. That's a big kid, and he's not done growing yet. So when you look at that, that is a power forward. The scouting report on him is that he's got really good hands. He can skate well enough. He needs to improve in that area, but he's always willing to go into the dirty areas of the ice, get in front of the net, and just be a nuisance. And what we all saw during that playoff series against Vegas is that's what Utah needs desperately. Obviously, this kid's not going to be hitting the AHL anytime soon. He's committed to play for the Michigan State Spartans this next season, who, by the way, Michigan State, if you're a betting person, bet on them to make the Frozen Four. They had like 8 guys drafted in the first 2 rounds. That's pretty good. So that's an exciting player down the road, again, that Utah has. But now, what do? Well, much like the Jazz, the Mammoth need a center, and they need a top-line center. The problem for the Mammoth is that pretty much every other team in the NHL needs that player. And there's only a few that are up for grabs, and they're not even truly up for grabs. The names that are out there, Dylan Larkin, Vincent Trocheck, Elias Pettersson, even Robert Thomas, some of them have been removed from the trade block. Others, it's going slow because those players have a lot of years left on their deals, and the GMs are saying, well, great, you don't want to play here, but guess what? You signed a contract, so you're going to have to play here unless we get some sort of deal that works. And for Detroit, a deal that works is some draft picks, obviously, but then a prospect or two that have real NHL upside, and then a player that isn't necessarily a like-for-like replacement of Dylan Larkin, but somebody that can play NHL minutes. Not many teams out there can give that to Detroit. Utah can. So that's why I'm keeping my eye on my phone to make sure that there's no trades happening as I'm recording this, because all they need to do is pull the trigger. That's all they need to do. And just tell Steve Yzerman of Detroit and say, yes, we will pay that. We want Dylan Larkin. And you know what else that does? That pretties up the picture for one Austin Matthews when he probably hits free agency here in a couple of years. And oh boy, would that be awesome. Maybe Zach Werenski, the guy who just won the best defenseman in the NHL this past season, he's told Columbus he's not going to sign an extension. That's not a trade request by any stretch of the imagination. That's just him saying, I want to test free agency, which is his right as a player. And the sooner that you inform your club of that decision, the better. Because then the club can say, all right, do we have what we need to go for it with this star player? Or he still has a couple of years left on his deal, like in the case of Zach Werenski. How much can we get back for him on the trade market? So you answer the calls. You don't make the calls, but you answer them. And if you get a deal where you're like, yeah, we can't pass this up, you make the deal. So that's the difference between the Zach Werenski side of things and the Dylan Larkin side of things, because Dylan Larkin still has 5 years left on his deal, whereas Zach Werenski is a free agency after the end of next season. So that's really the difference between the two situations. But Bill Armstrong has shown he is, A, willing to admit a mistake like he did with J.J. Peterka, and B, willing to make the big trade like he did in getting Mikhail Sergachev a couple of years ago. And J.J. Peterka last year. That was a big trade. It just didn't work out. So I'm excited to see what happens over the next couple of weeks here. I don't think Bill Armstrong is done by any stretch of the imagination. But if he is done, Utah's going to struggle to make the playoffs next year. I know the young players are going to take another step, but I don't know how many more steps they can take before they plateau. So Utah needs a 1C. They really do. Dylan Larkin is out there. You go get him. You go get him. If Utah is on his list of approved teams, you go. You just do it. You don't think twice. You pull the trigger. That's one thing I respect with Bill Armstrong. Once he makes a decision, he doesn't look back. He doesn't second guess. He just keeps going forward. So that's what I want Utah to do. I want them to be more aggressive in the trade market, especially with the draft in the rearview mirror. And I think they will be. I just don't know if it will be Dylan Larkin or if it'll be somebody else. But I know that Bill Armstrong is going to be aggressive out there, and Utah is almost on the doorstep. They are almost there. Almost. So that's the wrap up for you all for these last two drafts that we've had. One more addendum here at the end. Richie Saunders was drafted in the first part of the second round, and a lot of the scouting reports, a lot of the opposing coaches that they discussed with said that if he were healthy, he would have been a late first-round pick, maybe even late lottery, but that torn ACL dropped his value because he's going to be 25. That's not 18 or 19, like Darryn Peterson and AJ DeBonsa. But he did get selected, and the reason I bring this up is that's the first time since Danny Ainge roamed the campus down in Provo that two BYU players were drafted in the NBA draft. That's pretty awesome. And yeah, obviously, AJ DeBonsa is the first BYU player to ever be selected number 1 overall. That has been spoken of ad nauseum. I'm not going to talk about it here. It is a big deal. It's really awesome. But in today's college sports landscape, that has more to do with how deep your pockets are as opposed to how good your coaching, recruiting, and development are. So that's the difference there. That's why it's not as big of a deal for me. But that is the show this week, everybody. Thank you all so much for listening. I don't know if I'll be here next week. Obviously, we got my birthday, and then there's the 4th of July. So if you don't hear from me, please have a safe and wonderful Independence Day. Please have a safe and wonderful Canada Day and Matt Day. And I will see you all maybe next week, maybe later, when we spelunk back into the Matt Cave.